In the bustling city of Seoul, in the year 2087, life was harsh for many. Amidst towering skyscrapers and neon lights, poverty still lingered in shadowy corners. Hyung-soo, a middle-aged mechanic with calloused hands and a heart full of quiet kindness, lived modestly in a small apartment above his repair shop. He wasn't wealthy by any means, but had always believed that even the smallest act of generosity could ripple outward into something meaningful. One cold winter evening, as snowflakes drifted lazily from the sky, Hyung-soo noticed two young girls huddled near the dumpster behind his shop. They were thin, their faces gaunt, and their clothes barely enough to shield them from the biting wind. One of the girls, no older than 10, clutched her younger sister tightly, trying to share what little warmth she could muster. The sight tugged at Hyung-soo's heartstrings. He approached cautiously, not wanting to startle them. "Are you two okay?" he asked gently, his voice soft like an old friend's. The older girl looked up at him with wide, wary eyes, while the younger one buried her face deeper into her sibling's chest. Hyung-soo sighed and returned to his shop. Moments later, he came back carrying 2 steaming bowls of rice, topped with vegetables and fried eggs. It wasn't much, just leftovers from his dinner, but it was warm and filling. He knelt down and placed the bowls carefully on the ground. "Between them here," he said with a reassuring smile. "Eat this, you must be hungry." The older girl hesitated, glancing between the food and Hyung-soo. Hunger eventually overcame her fear, and she reached out tentatively to take one of the bowls. Her younger sister followed suit, grabbing the other bowl with trembling hands. They ate quickly, almost greedily, savoring every bite as if it might be their last meal. Hyung-soo watched silently, feeling both sadness and satisfaction. When they finished eating, the older girl looked up at him again, this time with gratitude shining in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered softly before adding, "My name is Ji-yoon, and this is my sister, Ua." Hyung-soo nodded, offering another gentle smile. "You're welcome. Stay safe tonight, all right?" Ji-yoon nodded, though Hyung-soo knew well enough that staying safe in such conditions was easier said than done. Still, there was nothing more he could do right now, except hope that his small act of kindness would give them strength to endure another day. That night, lying awake in bed, Hyung-soo couldn't shake off the image of those two fragile faces etched with hunger and exhaustion. He wondered about their lives, how they ended up alone, who they might have lost along the way. His thoughts wandered further, imagining all the other children out there facing similar struggles. For someone like him, who spent most days fixing machines and engines, these problems felt insurmountable. But deep down, he hoped that maybe, just maybe, his small gesture would plant a seed of hope in Ji-yoon and Sua's hearts. Over the next few weeks, Hyung-soo kept an eye out for the sisters whenever he worked late or passed by the alley behind his shop. However, they never reappeared. Perhaps they'd moved on, seeking shelter elsewhere, or perhaps something worse had happened. Either way, Hyung-soo tried not to dwell too much on it. Life went on, people came and went. Yet, every so often, when he walked past that spot where he'd shared his meal with them, he found himself pausing for a moment, wondering. Years rolled by, and Hyung-soo continued living his simple, uneventful life. Business at the repair shop remained steady, allowing him to pay rent and keep food on the table. Occasionally, customers would compliment him on his skillful work or leave behind tips, which he appreciated but never grew attached to. Material wealth had never been important to him. What mattered most was doing honest work and treating others kindly. Then, one ordinary afternoon exactly 10 years after that fateful snowy evening, something extraordinary happened. Hyung-soo was tinkering with a broken hoverbike when a low rumble echoed through the air. At first he thought it was thunder, but the sound grew louder and steadier, unlike anything he'd heard before. Stepping outside, he looked up and froze. Hovering silently above his shop was a massive spaceship unlike anything seen on Earth. Its sleek design shimmered under the sunlight, reflecting hues of silver and gold. The vessel exuded luxury, its polished surface devoid of scratches or imperfections. People gathered around, pointing and murmuring in awe as the ship descended gracefully onto the street in front of Hyung-soo's shop. Doors slid open with a soft hiss, revealing a ramp leading. Inside, everyone waited anxiously, unsure of what or who to expect. Then, 2 figures emerged from the ship. Both were women, dressed elegantly in flowing garments that seemed to glow faintly. Their presence commanded attention, yet there was something familiar about them. As they stepped closer, recognition dawned on Hyung-soo. Though taller and more refined now, their features unmistakably matched those of the 2 girls he'd fed all those years ago. Ji-yoon and Sua stood before him, transformed yet unchanged. "Mr. Hyung-soo," Ji-yoon began, her voice calm but filled with emotion. "We've come back to thank you." For a moment, Hyung-soo struggled to find words. All he managed was a stunned "Is that really you?" Ua smiled warmly, her youthful innocence still intact despite the passage of time. "Yes, it's us. Thanks to your kindness that night, we survived. And because of you, we were able to build new lives among the stars." Hyung-soo blinked, struggling to process everything. Among the stars? How was that even possible? Before he could ask, Ji-yoon explained. "Our parents died during the orbital collapse. she said, referring to a catastrophic event decades earlier, when several space colonies fell victim to structural failures. Afterward, we wandered Earth until we met you. That meal gave us hope, and eventually, a chance encounter led us to allies who helped us leave this planet. She gestured toward the magnificent ship behind her. This is our home now. We travel across galaxies, helping others who are less fortunate, and today, we've returned to repay the debt we owe you. Hu Hongzhu shook his head slowly. You don't owe me anything. I only did what anyone should have done. But you didn't, Ji-Yun replied firmly. Not everyone would have stopped to help strangers like us. Because of you, we learned the value of compassion, and we want to share that with you. With that, she extended a hand, inviting him aboard the ship. Hyung-Soo hesitated, glancing back at his humble repair shop. This was his life, simple, predictable, grounded. Could he really step away from it all to embark on some interstellar adventure? Before he could decide, Sua stepped forward, her expression earnest. Please come with us, Mr. Hyung-Soo. There's so much beauty out there waiting for you too. See? And besides, she grinned mischievously, we promise to bring you back whenever you want. Her playful tone broke through his uncertainty, and Hyun-Soo chuckled softly. Maybe it was time for a change. After all, hadn't he always believed in the power of small actions creating big ripples? If stepping onto this ship meant seeing firsthand how far his kindness had traveled, then perhaps it was worth taking the leap. Smiling, he took Ji-Yun's hand and allowed himself to be led aboard the luxurious spaceship. As the doors closed behind him and the vessel lifted off into the sky, Hyun-Soo felt a sense of wonder he hadn't experienced since childhood. Little did he know, this was just the beginning of an incredible journey, one that would redefine his understanding of humanity, gratitude, and the infinite possibilities of the universe. And somewhere amidst the stars, the ripples of his single act of kindness continued to spread, touching countless lives in ways he could never have imagined. That as the spaceship ascended higher and higher, Hyung-Soo stared out of the large transparent window in awe. The earth below grew smaller with each passing second until it became nothing more than a blue and green marble floating in the vast expanse of space. He had seen pictures of Earth from orbit before, but this was different. This was real. His heart raced as he took in the sight, feeling both exhilarated and slightly overwhelmed. Gi-yeon and Sua stood beside him, watching his reaction closely. They seemed amused by his wide-eyed wonder, exchanging knowing glances. It's beautiful, isn't it? Ji-Yoon said softly, her voice tinged with nostalgia. Hyung-Soo nodded slowly, still unable to tear his gaze away from the view. I never thought I'd see something like this, he admitted. It feels unreal. Sua giggled, patting him lightly on the shoulder. Don't worry, Mr. Hyung-Soo. You'll get used to it. Trust me, once you've seen one planet from space, you'll want to see them all. Her words sparked curiosity in Hyun-Soo. How many planets have you visited? He asked, turning to look at them. Ji-Yoon smiled proudly. Dozens, maybe even hundreds. We travel across galaxies, helping people who need it most. Sometimes we deliver food or medicine. Other times, we rebuild homes destroyed by disasters. It's our way of giving back to honor the kindness you showed us that night. Hyung-Soo felt a lump form in his throat. He hadn't realized how much impact his simple act of feeding 2 hungry girls could have. To think that they had dedicated their lives to helping others because of him, it was humbling. Almost too much to comprehend. The ship continued its journey, gliding smoothly through the cosmos. Hyung-Soo marveled at the technology surrounding him. Everything about the vessel screamed luxury, from the plush seating to the holographic displays that flickered to life at a mere wave of Ji-Yeon's hand. Yet despite its opulence, the interior felt warm and inviting, like a home rather than a machine. This is incredible, Hyung-Soo murmured, running his fingers over the smooth surface of a nearby console. How does it work? What powers it? Ji chuckled. You're asking questions just like a mechanic, she teased. The ship runs on quantum energy harvested from stars. It's clean, efficient, and nearly limitless. But don't worry, we won't bore you with technical details. Unless you're interested. I am interested, Hyung-Soo replied earnestly. Fixing things has been my life's work. Seeing something so advanced makes me curious. Well, maybe later we can show you around the engine room, Sua suggested brightly. Now though, let's focus on showing you the galaxy. With that, she gestured toward the main viewport, where a distant star system was beginning to come into view. Streams of light streaked past the windows as the ship entered hyperspace, creating an effect that looked like shooting stars frozen mid. Hyung-Soo watched in silence, captivated by the sheer beauty of it all. After what felt like hours but was likely only minutes, the ship slowed down, emerging near a vibrant orange planet surrounded by rings of shimmering dust. The sight took Hyung-Soo's breath away. What is that place? He asked, pointing at the glowing orb. That's Zoria, Ji-Yoon explained, a small colony world known for its stunning sunsets and rich mineral deposits. We're here to deliver supplies to some settlers who've been struggling lately. Hyung-Soo frowned slightly. Struggling? Why isn't this planet valuable? It is, Sua chimed in, but mining operations attract greedy corporations. They exploit the workers, paying them barely enough to survive while taking most of the profits for themselves. That's why we step in to make sure everyone gets what they deserve. Their explanation left Hyung-soo feeling uneasy. He had always lived a simple life, far removed from such injustices. Hearing about exploitation and greed made him realize how sheltered he had been. Still, he couldn't help but admire Ji-yoon and Soo-ah for using their resources to fight against these wrongs. When the ship landed on Zorya, Hoon-soo followed Ji-yoon and Soo-ah outside. The air was thin but breathable, carrying a faint metallic tang. Before them stretched a barren landscape dotted with makeshift shelters and towering mining rigs. Workers moved about listlessly, their faces lined with exhaustion. "Stay close," Ji-yoon warned as they approached a group of settlers gathered near a crumbling building. Some of them might not trust outsiders right away. Sure enough, the settlers eyed the trio warily as they approached. However, when Ji-yoon opened the cargo bay of the ship to reveal crates filled with food, medical supplies, and tools, their expressions softened. Murmurs of gratitude spread through the crowd, and soon people began lining up to receive aid. Hyung-soo pitched in wherever he could, handing out supplies and offering words of encouragement. Despite the language barrier, he didn't speak the settlers' dialect. They communicated through gestures and smiles. It reminded him of his early days as a mechanic, when customers would express their thanks with nods and handshakes instead of words. One elderly man caught his attention. The man's hands were calloused and scarred, evidence of years spent laboring in harsh conditions. When Hyung-soo handed him a box of tools, the man clasped his hands tightly, tears welling up in his eyes. Though Hyung-soo couldn't understand what he was saying, the gratitude in his voice was unmistakable. By the time the distribution was complete, the sun was setting, casting the sky in hues of fiery orange and deep purple. Hyung-soo sat on a rocky ledge overlooking the settlement, watching the colors dance across the horizon. Ji-yoon joined him moments later, sitting quietly beside him. "You did good today," she said after a while. "The settlers appreciated your help." Hyung-soo shrugged modestly. "I just did what anyone else would have done. You're the ones making a real difference." Ji-yoon shook her head. "No, Mr. Hoon-soo, every little bit counts. Remember what you told us that night. Even the smallest act of kindness can ripple outward. That's why we do what we do, why we brought you here, to show you how far those ripples can go." Her words struck a chord within him. For so long, he had doubted the significance of his actions, believing they were too small to matter. But seeing the impact firsthand on Zorya, on Ji-yoon and Soo-ah, and undoubtedly on countless others, made him realize that perhaps he had underestimated himself. As the stars began to twinkle in the darkening sky, Hyung-soo felt a sense of peace wash over him. This journey was unlike anything he had ever imagined, yet it felt strangely familiar. Helping others, no matter where or how, was something he understood deeply. And if Ji-yoon and Soo-ah believed he had a role to play in their mission, then maybe it was time to embrace it fully. After their time on Zorya, Hyung-soo felt a growing sense of purpose. For the first time in years, he wasn't just fixing machines or tinkering with broken parts. He was part of something bigger. Ji and Soo-ah had shown him how far a single act of kindness could spread, and now he wanted to contribute more. He didn't fully understand everything about their work yet, but he was eager to learn. The next stop on their journey took them to a planet called Leora, a world bathed in perpetual twilight due to its position near a dying star. As the ship descended through thick clouds of violet mist, Hyung-soo peered out the window, curious about what lay below. What he saw surprised him. Unlike Zorya's barren landscape, Leora was lush and vibrant, its surface covered in sprawling forests and glowing rivers that shimmered like liquid gold under the dim light. "This place is beautiful," Hyung-soo said as they landed. "It doesn't look like somewhere people would need help." Ji-yoon exchanged a glance with Soo-ah before answering. "Appearances can be deceiving," she said. "Leora may look peaceful, but it's home to some of the harshest living conditions in the galaxy. The environment here is toxic to most species, including humans. Only a few settlements survive, and even they struggle daily." Hyung-soo frowned. "Toxic? Then why do people live here?" "For the crystals," Soo-ah explained. "Leora produces rare energy crystals used in advanced technology. They're worth a fortune, which is why corporations send workers here despite the dangers. But those workers are often treated poorly, left to fend for themselves against the planet's hazards." As they stepped off the ship, Hoon-soo immediately noticed the oppressive atmosphere. The air felt heavy, almost suffocating, and carried a faint metallic taste. Even with protective suits provided by Ji-yoon and Soo-ah, he could feel his body reacting to the toxins. His skin prickled uncomfortably, and his head began to throb after only a few minutes outside. "Are you okay?" Ji-yoon asked, noticing his discomfort. "It's manageable," Hyung-soo replied, though sweat was already forming on his brow. "Let's get to work." Their destination was a small mining camp nestled deep within the forest. The path leading there was narrow and treacherous, lined with jagged rocks and tangled roots. Along the way, Hyung-soo marveled at the strange flora surrounding them. Trees with translucent leaves emitted soft glows, while vines dripped with droplets of golden sap. It was otherworldly and hauntingly beautiful. When they finally reached the camp, Hyung-soo understood why Ji-yoon had warned him earlier. The settlers were gaunt and weary, their faces hidden behind cracked helmets and tattered suits. Makeshift shelters leaned precariously against ancient trees, barely holding together under the weight of the harsh environment. Children played quietly in the shadows, their laughter muffled by the oppressive silence of the forest. "We brought supplies," Ji-yoon announced as the settlers gathered around. "Food, medicine, and new filtration systems for your suits. You won't have to worry about running out anytime soon." Relief washed over the settlers' faces, but one man stepped forward, his voice trembling with anger. "Supplies won't fix everything," he growled. "We're dying out here, and no one cares. The company promised us safety, but all they care about is profit." Hyung-soo watched as Ji-yoon placed a calming hand on the man's shoulder. "We know," she said gently, "and we're here to help not just today, but however long it takes. But we need your trust to make things better." The man hesitated, then nodded reluctantly. "Fine, do what you can." Over the next several hours, Hyung-soo worked alongside Ji-yoon and Sua to distribute the supplies. They repaired damaged equipment, replaced faulty filters in the settlers' suits, and set up temporary shelters to protect them from the worsening weather. Despite the grueling work, Hyung-soo found himself smiling. These people needed him, and for once, he felt truly useful. But as night fell lower rather, as the already dim light grew darker, Hyung-soo realized the true extent of the settlers' suffering. One young boy, no older than 8, approached him timidly, clutching a broken toy robot. "Can you fix this?" the boy asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Hyung-soo knelt down, examining the toy. It was beyond repair, its circuits fried and casing cracked beyond salvage. Still, he nodded reassuringly. "I'll try my best," he said, ruffling the boy's hair. "But I might need some time." The boy's eyes lit up with hope, and Hyun-soo felt a pang of guilt. He knew he couldn't promise miracles, but he hated seeing disappointment in someone so young. Later that evening, as they prepared to leave, Ji-yoon pulled Hyung-soo aside. "You've done well," she said, "but there's something you should see before we go." She led him to the edge of the forest, where a massive crystal mine loomed in the distance. Its walls sparkled with countless gems, each one pulsing faintly with energy. Workers moved back and forth like ants, hauling crates of crystals onto waiting cargo ships. The scene was mesmerizing, but also deeply unsettling. "Do you see that?" Ji-yoon pointed to a group of overseers standing nearby, armed with weapons, and wearing pristine suits. "They don't care about the workers. If someone gets sick or injured, they're left behind. All they care about is meeting quotas." Hyung-soo clenched his fists, anger rising in his chest. "How can anyone let this happen?" he demanded. "These people deserve better." "That's why we're here," Ji-yoon replied firmly. "To give them hope. To remind them that they matter, and maybe someday, to bring these corporations to justice." Her words stayed with Hyung-soo long after they returned to the ship. As they ascended into space, leaving Leora's toxic beauty behind, he couldn't shake the image of the boy's broken toy or the desperation in the workers' eyes. For all the good they had done, it felt like a drop in the ocean compared to the vastness of the problem back aboard the ship. Uwa joined him in the observation lounge, where he sat staring out at the stars. "You seem troubled," she said softly. "I am," Hyung-soo admitted. "I want to help, but sometimes it feels like we're fighting an impossible battle. How can we ever make a real difference?" Uwa smiled, sitting beside him. "Remember what you taught us. Even the smallest act of kindness matters. Sure, we can't solve everything overnight, but every life we touch, every person we help, they carry that kindness forward. That's how change happens. Slowly, but surely." Her words comforted him, though doubts still lingered. He thought about the settlers on Zoria, the miners on Leora, and all the others they had helped along the way. Each of them had faced unimaginable hardships, yet they kept going because someone cared enough to lend a hand. As the ship continued its journey, Hyung-soo resolved to keep doing his part, no matter how small it seemed. He didn't have all the answers, and he certainly wasn't a hero. But if his actions could inspire even one person to believe in a better future, then it would be worth it. The next stop on their journey took Hyugun, Jun, and Sua to a place unlike any they had visited before. It wasn't a planet or a moon, it was a massive space station orbiting a dying star. Known as Nexus 7, the station was a hub for trade, diplomacy, and technology exchange among countless species across the galaxy. Its towering spires glimmered with artificial light, and its bustling corridors teemed with life forms of every shape and size. As the ship docked at one of the station's many ports, Hyung-soo felt both excitement and unease. He had never seen so many aliens in one place or even interacted with one outside of holovids and history books. The sheer diversity overwhelmed him, but he reminded himself that kindness transcended species. After all, Ji-yoon and Sua had shown him time and again that compassion was universal. "This is where we'll find answers," Ji-yoon said as they disembarked. Her tone was unusually serious, which caught Hyun-soo's attention. "Answers to what?" he asked, looking around at the chaotic marketplace filled with strange creatures haggling over exotic goods. "To why things are the way they are," she replied cryptically. Nexus 7 isn't just a trading post, it's also home to some of the most powerful organizations in the galaxy, the same ones exploiting planets like Leo. Sua nodded grimly. We're here to gather information. If we can expose these corporations, maybe we can start changing the system. Hunsu swallowed hard. This sounded dangerous, far beyond anything he had signed up for when he boarded the ship, but he trusted June and Sua, and if this was part of their mission, then he would do his best to help. They navigated through the crowded streets of Nexus 7, blending into the throng of traders, travelers, and mercenaries. Despite the station's advanced technology, there was an undercurrent of tension in the air. Fights broke out occasionally, and shady deals were made in dark corners. Hyung-soo kept close to Jion and Sua, feeling out of place among the alien crowd. Their destination was a secluded cantina tucked away in a quieter section of the station. Inside, dim lighting cast long shadows across the room, and the hum of conversation was low and cautious. Most patrons seemed to know each other, exchanging wary glances as newcomers entered. Gi-yoon led them to a corner table where a hooded figure sat waiting. Ju and the figure greeted, pulling back their hood to reveal a humanoid alien with pale blue skin and sharp, angular features. Their voice was smooth but carried an edge of suspicion. You've brought outsiders. This is Hyung-soo, Ji-yoon introduced. He's trustworthy. We need his help. The alien studied Hyun-soo carefully before nodding once. Very well, my name is Kale. I represent a coalition fighting against corporate exploitation. What you see on planets like Leora is only the tip of the iceberg. These companies control entire governments, manipulate economies, and silence anyone who opposes them. Hu Hongsu listened intently, his heart sinking as Kale spoke. He had suspected corruption existed on a large scale, but hearing it laid out so plainly made it feel suffocatingly real. How do we stop them? Hyung-soo asked, his voice firm despite the weight of the situation. Kale leaned forward, lowering their voice further. By exposing their secrets, they operate in the shadows, hiding behind layers of bureaucracy and misinformation. But we've uncovered evidence files detailing illegal experiments, forced labor camps, and environmental destruction on a galactic scale. If we release this information publicly, it could spark a revolution. But releasing it won't be easy. Gyun added, these corporations have spies everywhere. We'll need to act quickly and carefully. For the next several hours, Hu Hong-soo, Ji-yoon, and Sua worked with Kale to review the files. The data was overwhelming, pages upon pages of technical jargon, financial records, and disturbing images of suffering workers and devastated ecosystems. Hyung-soo struggled to process it all, but he focused on understanding the parts he could. His mechanical mind helped him piece together connections between seemingly unrelated pieces of information. We'll need to encrypt the files and send them to multiple secure locations, Ji-yoon explained. That way, even if one copy gets destroyed, others will survive. Hyung-soo nodded, rolling up his sleeves. I can handle that. Back on Earth, I used to repair old computers and set up security systems for clients. This shouldn't be too different. With renewed determination, he set to work, using tools provided by Kale to create encrypted copies of the files. As he worked, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Every now and then he glanced over his shoulder, half expecting someone to burst in and stop them. But no one came. By the time they finished, exhaustion weighed heavily on everyone, yet there was a sense of accomplishment in the air. For the first time, Hyung-soo felt like he was truly making a difference, not just through small acts of kindness, but by challenging the very forces that caused suffering. As they prepared to leave the cantina, Kale stopped them. Be careful, they warned. Once this information goes public, you'll become targets. These corporations don't forgive easily. Ji-yoon met Kale's gaze steadily. We knew the risks when we started this fight. Thank you for your help. Back aboard the ship, Hyung-soo sat quietly in the observation lounge, staring out at the endless expanse of stars. His mind raced with thoughts of what lay ahead. Would their efforts succeed, or would they fail, risking not only their lives but also the safety of those they sought to protect? Sua joined him after a while, sitting beside him in silence. Finally she spoke. Are you scared? A little, Hyung-soo admitted, but I'm more angry than scared. Angry that people can treat each other and other beings so cruelly. If we don't try to change things, who will? Sua smiled faintly. That's why we chose you, Mr. Hyung-soo. You remind us of the goodness in humanity, the reason we keep fighting. Her words gave him strength, though uncertainty still lingered. They had taken the first step toward dismantling a corrupt system, but the road ahead would be long and fraught with danger. Still, Hyung-soo resolved to see it through. If kindness could ripple outward, then perhaps justice could too. The encrypted files were sent out into the galaxy, dispersed across secure networks and hidden servers. Ji-yoon, Sua, and Hyung-soo watched anxiously as the data spread like wildfire, reaching news outlets, resistance groups, and ordinary citizens who had long suffered under corporate oppression. Within days, protests erupted on dozens of planets. Workers demanded better conditions, governments faced pressure to investigate corruption, and the once sensible corporations found themselves scrambling to contain the fallout. But with progress came consequences. It wasn't long before their enemies struck back. One evening, as the ship drifted through a quiet corner of space, alarms blared suddenly throughout its interior. Red warning lights flashed, and the hum of the engines grew louder as the vessel accelerated unexpectedly. Hunsu bolted upright from his seat in the observation lounge, heart pounding. "What's happening?" he called out to Jion, who was already rushing toward the cockpit. "We're being followed," Jion replied grimly, her hands flying over the controls. On the main viewport, 3 sleek fighter ships appeared, closing in fast. Their designs were unmistakably corporate, streamlined, aggressive, and bristling with weapons. Su-Ah joined them moments later, her face pale but determined. "They know it was us. We have to lose them." Hoyoung-soo gripped the back of a chair tightly, feeling helpless. "Can we outrun them?" Ji-yoon didn't answer immediately, her focus entirely on maneuvering the ship. She activated the cloaking device, causing the vessel to shimmer briefly before disappearing from view. For a tense moment, the pursuing ships hesitated, scanning the area for any trace of their target. Then, one by one, they turned away, apparently convinced they had lost their prey. "That won't hold them off forever," Sua said quietly. "They'll keep looking, and next time, they might not miss." Hyung-soo sank into a nearby seat, overwhelmed by the realization that their actions had put them directly in harm's way. He had always thought of kindness as something gentle, something safe. Now he understood that standing up for what was right could be dangerous and, sometimes deadly. After hours of tense silence, Ji-yoon set a course for Earth. "We need to lay low for a while," she explained. "If we stay hidden among humanity's home planet, maybe they won't think to look for us there." When the ship finally touched down near Hung-soo's old repair shop, he felt a strange mix of relief and apprehension. Returning to Earth meant going back to the life he'd left behind. But it also meant facing the reality that his world was now entangled with theirs. As they stepped outside, the familiar sights and sounds of Seoul greeted him. Bustling streets, towering skyscrapers, and the faint smell of oil and metal lingering in the air. For the first few days, they kept a low profile, staying inside the shop and avoiding attention. Hyung-soo resumed tinkering with broken machines, finding comfort in the routine. Yet even as he worked, he couldn't shake the feeling that danger still loomed nearby. Every knock at the door made him jump. Every shadow passing the window seemed suspicious. Then, one morning, an unexpected visitor arrived. A young man stood outside the shop, his clothes plain but clean, his expression earnest. When Hyung-soo opened the door, the man bowed deeply. "Are you Hyung-soo?" he asked. "Yes." Hyung-soo replied cautiously. "Who are you?" "My name is Min-seok," the man said, straightening up. "I came to thank you." "Thank me for what?" Min-seok smiled softly. "For inspiring change. After the files were released, workers on my planet organized strikes. Conditions are improving slowly, but it's because of people like you who refuse to stay silent." Hyung-soo stared at him, stunned. "I didn't do anything special. I just helped where I could. And that's exactly why you're special," Min-seok said firmly. "Not everyone would take the risk, but you did. And because of that, others followed." Tears welled up in Hyung-soo's eyes as gratitude washed over him. This was what Jion and Sua had been trying to show him all along, the ripple effect of kindness. His small act of feeding 2 girls had grown into something far greater than he ever imagined. Over the following weeks, more visitors came, not just humans, but aliens too. Some brought gifts, others shared stories of hope and resilience. Each encounter reinforced Hyung-soo's belief that even in the darkest times, compassion could light the way forward. But the fight wasn't over. Corporate forces continued to hunt Ji-yoon and Sua, forcing them to remain cautious. One night, as they sat together in the dim glow of the shop's overhead lights, Hyung-soo spoke up. "What happens next?" Ji-yoon exchanged a glance with Ua. Before answering, "We keep going. There's still so much work to be done, but we can't do it alone. That's why we need people like you, people who understand the power of kindness." Hyung-soo nodded slowly, resolve hardening within him. "Then count me in, whatever it takes." Months passed, and Hyung-soo became an integral part of their mission. Together, they traveled across the galaxy, spreading hope and fighting injustice. Wherever they went, along the way, they encountered setbacks and triumphs, losses and victories. Through it all, Hyung-soo never forgot the lesson he had learned on that snowy night years ago, that even the smallest act of kindness could spark change. Eventually, their efforts began to bear fruit. Governments enacted reforms, corporations faced accountability, and oppressed communities found strength in unity. Nexus 7 transformed into a symbol of resistance rather than exploitation, hosting conferences and summits aimed at building a fairer future. As Hyung-soo stood aboard the ship one final time, gazing out at the stars, he felt a profound sense of fulfillment. He hadn't set out to change the galaxy, he had simply wanted to help those in need. Yet somehow, his journey had led him here, to a place where hope shone brighter than fear, and where the ripples of kindness stretched farther than anyone could have dreamed. June placed a hand on his shoulder. "You did good, Mr. Hyung-soo, better than good. You reminded us all of what it means to care." He smiled, tears glistening in his eyes. "No, Ji-yoon, you and SOA reminded me. Thank you for letting me be part of this. And as the ship sailed onward, carrying its crew toward new adventures, Hyongsu knew one thing for certain: the ripple would never stop. It would continue spreading, touching lives across the stars, proving that no act of kindness, no matter how ever wasted,